This is an important examination of the human condition.
Star Trek Lower Decks is a great show, but a recent episode called Crisis Point 2 blew me away as a psychologist. Star Trek is no stranger to putting some heavy philosophy into their episodes from time to time, but this episode was steeped in existentialism. And existentialism is what I am all about. So I'd like to take just a moment to talk about what this episode had in it that was so exciting for me as an existential psychologist, and what there is for you that you can take away with you in terms of how to live your life better, and what the character Boimler learned throughout the episode. Of course, a quick spoiler warning that we are talking about details of that episode, Crisis Point 2. So if you haven't watched the episode yet, stop this video, go watch it, and then come back for the full breakdown. If you're not familiar with Star Trek Lower Decks, the show follows 4 junior officers as they get into hijinks and antics, being relatively inexperienced and immature young officers. The particular plotline that we're looking at in this only looks at 2 of these 4 characters. Brad Boimler, the purple-haired guy here, and then his buddy Beckett Mariner next to him. Setting the stage for this episode, Boimler has created a sequel movie to one that Mariner created in an earlier episode. And this sequel movie is just meant to be a fun, interactive holodeck experience that's like a thrill ride or an action-adventure for everyone to have fun doing. And he was all ready for this fun, exciting adventure until he got called away. And when he came back into the holodeck, his whole demeanor and mood had shifted. He's now sad and seemed depressed and distracted by something. Clearly something happened while he was out of the holodeck, but we don't know yet. What we do know is that he's no longer interested in the thrill ride and excitement of the movie that he created. Instead, he's focused on gaining answers to deep questions about the meaning of life. And that's reflected in these set of clips.
I need answers. The holodeck's creating meaning for these guys. This could be the key to it all. We're gonna go find the meaning of life. This is better than what I wrote. This is important. You should be thanking me for turning your mess into a classy story that means something.
It is steeped in significance, wise one.
This is an important examination of the human condition.
As a psychologist, this is where I become fascinated with what's going on. What would take him from being this fun, jovial person that's ready to dive in and have fun in this holodeck program, and then all of a sudden be so obsessively focused on meaning and the human condition? Well, I think we can all guess, and if you've watched the episode, you know it's because there was a loss, a very personal loss. And it's when we're confronted with death that we really start to think about meaning. And that's shown in these couple of clips.
William, his transporter clone on the Titan, died this morning.
What? Died? What?
Freak gas leak. Neurocene flooded his quarters. He was asleep. Hell of a way to go.
Yeah, so Ransom told me about William. I'm so sorry. You must feel terrible.
He died for no reason. I guess I was trying to make all of this matter because then I would matter.
What we see reflected in Boimler's struggle here is the same one that many of us have faced, where once tragedy happens, once we're confronted with loss, that's when we really start to become introspective and ask, what meaning is there out there and what is our purpose? Because before then, we just kind of go through on the thrill ride, on the adventure of life and trying to have fun, make a name for ourselves doing these things. But once that loss happens, that's when we fall apart and we start looking for meaning. And this is where existentialism comes in. Without going into the complexities, existentialism basically says that we create our own meaning and purpose in life. But if you've never really taken the time to do that deep searching of what meaning and purpose is important to you, then you don't really know how to go about the process or how to look for it. So you start looking outward for answers, like Boimler is doing here. He's looking for those answers of existence from the holodeck program. And through that journey of asking those questions of the holodeck, he goes through a number of ups and downs until the end of the episode. And those ups and downs are reflected in these final couple of clips.
A man named William Boimler died. It was meaningless. What is life for? My movie is trash! It doesn't have a deeper meaning, and neither does life! I was in the holodeck trying to find meaning in the randomness of death, but I just made a fool of myself.
The randomness of death is merely a reflection of the unexpected joys we find in life.
So if I spend my life worrying about a meaningless death, I'll never find joy?
Sorry you didn't find out the meaning of life today.
You know what? I think maybe I shouldn't have been looking for it.
So is that really the message of the episode, that we shouldn't be looking for meaning in our lives at all? We should just be moving moment to moment, finding joys as we go? Well, not exactly. As I said before, he's looking outward toward the holodeck for answers because he doesn't have the skill and the process to be able to figure out meaning for himself. And in the episode, the holodeck ends up being clearly a facade of arbitrary and superficial answers that don't give him anything. And the scene at the end where he's next to the horse and Captain Sulu talking isn't from the holodeck. That's from his own mind while he's unconscious. So that's actually a conversation with himself. And he does get meaningful answers from that conversation because he is now looking inward and figuring out what is important to him. So it's not that he's abandoned his search for meaning, it's that he found answers in himself rather than looking outward. And that's the message of the episode, which is that the holodeck didn't give him the answers because those were outward. The answers were inward in himself, and that's what existentialism says. It says that the answers to where meaning resides and where purpose resides is not outside of yourself. It can only be within yourself. Now, he had to wait until he had this loss, and most of us do before we start to come to that realization, we start to engage in the process. But the takeaway from this episode is that you don't have to wait until tragedy and loss to begin that process. You can take the time now to do that deep, meaningful search, to figure out what your purpose and direction needs to be for you as a unique individual. That's a scary thing, though, because it does mean looking at the life we have around us and saying, well, wait, is this comfortable life I might have? Is this life that's stable? Maybe not exactly what's for me. And that's scary because you're likely to cause some instability when you start asking those deeper questions. So most of us avoid it until we have to deal with it when we're confronted with death. And so I would implore everyone to put a bit more existentialism into their life and ask those deeper questions as if there was a loss recently in your life. So hopefully you enjoyed this discussion. I'm going to try to do a lot more of them in the future. And as we go along, please click like and subscribe on the channel. This is a very new thing I'm just trying to get into. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and I will see you at the next analysis.